Experts estimate that upwards of 1,000 people go missing every year in national parks across the U.S. And today, this is one of those stories. The story starts June 14th, 1969 in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in Tennessee, when two families descended upon the national park for an annual camping trip for Father's Day. The two families had started their hike at Cades Cove, the Russell Field where they camped for their first night. So the first leg of the trip went without incident. The next day, they awoke and hiked to Spence Field where they planned to spend the night. The children from both families decided that they wanted to surprise the adults and began to hide around camp. 6-year-old Dennis Martin was seen by his dad hiding behind a bush, but just 5 minutes later the other children returned, but Dennis was nowhere to be found. Dennis was wearing a bright red shirt, which was easily seen by the contrast of the green all around them, so it seemed like the children may have left Dennis on purpose so not to ruin the prank. After 2 hours of frantic searching by everybody at camp, the Park Service rangers were notified, and the search and rescue efforts began. The area had numerous dangers, such as ravines, steep slopes, and numerous wild animals. Suddenly a microburst hit, flooding surrounding streams and taking out any signs of little Dennis nearby. To make matters even worse, the temperatures dropped down to 50 degrees and Dennis was not dressed for that kind of weather. By afternoon the next day, almost 250 people had joined the search. The details of the case proved to make an incident headline and even garnered the attention of the president. By day 7 of the search, Dennis's 7th birthday had arrived. Along with it came upwards of 1,500 people, including the National Guard, FBI, and the Green Berets. But unfortunately, with the sheer number of people looking, many not knowing what to look for, and contaminating the areas that they went across may have done more harm than good. But despite all efforts, including helicopters and dogs, no signs of Dennis could still be found. There was only one possible clue during this time as to where Dennis could have gone. It was found in a peculiar set of little human tracks. One was barefoot, and the other was wearing a shoe similar to what Dennis could have been wearing. But after the Martins declared that it was too big to be Dennis's, the ranger said it must have come from a Boy Scout volunteering. Hope began to fade, but the tips continued to flood in, including one from a well-known sidekick, but unfortunately led to nowhere. On June 25th, 11 days after Dennis went missing, his family returned home. And 15 days after Dennis went missing on June 29th, all major searches were suspended. A month after Dennis went missing, a small group of remaining searchers reported a putrid smell coming from around the area where Dennis went missing, but it unfortunately seemed like this was never rechecked out, and by September of the same year, the search was officially called off. A few years after Dennis had last been seen, a man reportedly found a small skeleton, but since he was doing illegal foraging, decided to keep this to himself for decades until 1985. But unfortunately by then it was too late and no remnants could be found. And in the 1990s, a man contacted park officials thinking that he'd be Dennis, but he turned out to not be. And sadly, to this day, more than 50 years later, David has never been found. His father died in 2014, never knowing the mystery of what happened to his son. And since then, the National Park Service completely changed their search and rescue operations, resulting in only 4 people who have failed to be found in the Smokies.
Did you know that over 1,000 people a year disappear from Yellowstone National Park? And most of them are never found. Now, this story comes out of Yellowstone. There was this man named Jeff. Jeff said every year him and his father would go camping at Yellowstone National Park. And this one particular summer, they decided to go for the weekend. Now, they had found a new spot that was pretty remote, and this was their first time camping in this area. So they set up their campsite, they get a good fire going, and they started to tell scary stories. After a while, Jeff started getting tired, and he tells his dad, I'm gonna go in the tent and lay down. So he goes into the tent and he falls asleep. Well, a couple hours later, he wakes up to his father, who is screaming and having some kind of nightmare. And he's like, Dad, are you okay? And his dad is just, help me. And he said, he just was like, okay, you must be having a bad nightmare. So he managed to just ignore him and eventually fall back asleep. But shortly after that, he wakes up again. And he has this really bad feeling, like something is wrong. And he just couldn't seem to shake it. So he unzips the tent, he goes outside and starts using the restroom. When all of a sudden he hears his father's voice clearly say, Jeff, come over here. Come into the woods. And he's like, Dad, what are you doing out of the tent? And he's like, Jeff, come on, come into the woods, Jeff. Jeff, come here. And he's like, okay. So he starts walking into the woods. And he's like, Dad, where are you? Where are you? And he just hears his dad say, come a little closer, Jeff. Come a little closer. And that's when he noticed it just got really, really quiet. And all of a sudden, he hears a clapping sound. Then he hears it again. Then he hears it a third time. And out of the corner of his eye, he sees the shadow of something kind of zigzagging between the trees. And then, right in front of him, he sees this deer. Except this deer is standing on its hind legs like a person. It has antlers, it has all the features of a deer. But it has these glowing yellow eyes. And it is talking in his father's voice. So Jeff frantically runs back to the tent, and when he unzips it, he is shocked to find his father is not in there. So he starts yelling for his father, looking all around. And that's when he sees truck lights, and he sees his father's truck. And he realizes his father was not in the tent. He must have left and went somewhere. So he runs up to his father and is like freaked out, tells him what happened. And his father was like, after you fell asleep, I went over to this other people's campsite and I was hanging out with them for a while. And then I was coming back to go to bed. But he can see that Jeff is visibly shaken. So he says, you know what, let's just go ahead and leave. Well, as they were making their way out of the Yellowstone Park, he said they happened to overhear some people at the visitor center talking about someone had went missing. And what was eerie is he was very similar in age and look to Jeff. Now, this next story also comes out of Yellowstone. There was this geologist, and he was tasked with going to this particular region of Yellowstone in the southeast corner that is pretty remote and rarely visited. And there has not been a lot of people doing research in this area. So he happens to go there for like 3 days to do some kind of research. So he had set up his campsite and he was making dinner when all of a sudden he started to hear like a humming sound. And he said it was just kind of buzzing in his head, and it was just like very repetitive. And he couldn't figure out like where would that be coming from, because there's nothing out here, it's just woods everywhere. So he started walking in the direction of this humming sound, and he could hear it getting louder and louder. And that's when he runs right into this like 8-foot tall fence, and it goes down all the way on both sides. And he's like, why is there this huge fence out in the middle of the forest? Like what is behind here? So he manages to find a spot where he could get in underneath the fence, and he crawls into this area. He starts walking around for a little bit, and he could hear the humming sound getting louder and louder. And that's when he came out to sort of this clearing, and he said he couldn't believe his eyes. There was this pyramid-like rock structure with some kind of entrance, and there were these very tall men coming out of it. And he said, they were just tall, gray, very long arms, very long heads, is the way he described it. And he said they noticed him, and he started to panic. But then all of a sudden he heard a voice in his head say, "Do not be afraid." And he just instantly felt peace overcome him. And he said, then it said, "You are not ready to know what we know. You need to leave." And so he turned and he left, and he went back under the fence and he got out of there. So he leaves his campsite and he goes to the nearest ranger station, and he starts telling them there's something out there, I don't know what's happening, but there's this fenced in area. And all the rangers are kind of this guy's losing it. So as he leaves the ranger station, one of the rangers runs up to him and is like, "Hey, don't tell anyone, but I believe you. There is a lot of weird stuff that goes on here that we don't really talk about, but you did see something, and something happened."
What is the scariest thing you can think of happening while camping? This story comes straight from the heart of Appalachia. And if you love scary camping stories, this week's episode is probably the scariest camping story I've ever heard. So the story goes that in the Great Smoky Mountains, a scout leader was taking a bunch of Boy Scouts up into the mountains for the weekend. And they were deep in the mountains. The nearest road was supposedly 6 miles away. So that night, all of the campers go to sleep except for the scoutmaster. He wanted to stay up and read, but also he was getting this weird feeling that something was watching them. So he's laying awake in his hammock when all of a sudden he hears rustling. It's too small to be a bear, but way bigger than a squirrel. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this man just walks out of the woods. It's the dead of night and he has no gear and no flashlight. And he just sits at the edge of their camp watching the tents. The scoutmaster's laying in his hammock trying to not move a muscle, and he ends up laying there for 3 hours. And all the while, he's thinking about how he was just reading about feral people living in the Smoky Mountains. Eventually, the guy gets up, stares at the camp for a few more minutes, and turns around and leaves. The scoutmaster makes everyone leave that next day, but he keeps getting the feeling that someone's watching him the whole rest of the weekend. I have a bunch of episodes that have different scary camping stories, so check them out.
Scary story time at 3 a.m. Appalachia Mountain Edition while I make slime. For those of you who did not know, I also make YouTube videos, scary story time YouTube videos. So yeah, currently making one now. Get your money's worth and let it drain. Monica and her best friend rented a cabin for her birthday. Now, when they arrived, everything was nice. The trail was nice. They had a fun time. But this specific cabin had an outhouse. So unfortunately, at around 1:30 a.m., Monica had to use the bathroom pretty badly. She's scared, but of course she goes to use the bathroom, and as she's going, she's in complete darkness, and she hears her best friend's voice saying, "Come here." Same pitch, same slang, everything, but she whispered it. So Monica responds back like, "Girl, what? Like, I'm using the bathroom." And then the voice laughed, and it was her exact laugh, but it kind of echoed, and it was weird because it like echoed too many times, and then the voice said, "Come here, I need your help. Like, come to the trees." And that's when she realized the best friend's voice wasn't coming from the cabin, it was coming from the tree line. She sprinted to the freaking cabin because she thinking that her best friend need help or her best friend got kidnapped or something. And that's when she found her best friend passed out. She was snoring, drooling, probably having a good old dream before she went up in there and scared her awake. She was screaming. She woke up her best friend. Her best friend's like, "Girl, what's wrong? What's going on?" And that's when she said, "Girl," oh my gosh, she said, "Girl," like, she told her everything that happened basically. And her best friend was like, "Girl, I've been in here the whole time. Like, I wasn't pranking you. Like, I've been in here the whole time." So when they told the cabin owner the next morning, the cabin owner was like, "Well, yeah, the trees echo what you fear at night. So that's why the locals don't go out at night." As a matter of fact, why did you even let me why wouldn't you tell me the rules? If you knew this, why wouldn't you tell me before, man, I'm stuttering. But why wouldn't you tell me the rules? And then why would you have an outhouse knowing that I'm not supposed to be going outside at night? That don't even make no sense. I'm not supposed to be going outside at night, and you got an outhouse. Man, this is rigged. I blame the owner.
This is Dennis Lloyd Martin. He was a 6-year-old boy who went missing in the Smoky Mountains on a family camping trip. Dennis Lloyd Martin was born on September 20th, 1962, and he lived in Knoxville, Tennessee. On June 14th, 1969, the Martin family decided to go on a camping trip to the Smoky Mountain National Park. Near Spencefield, it's known for its lush forests and just very beautiful. After they arrived, they met up with some family friends, the Key family. After they met up with them, they decided to go for a hike through the woods, and Dennis and his older brother Douglas thought it would be funny to play a prank on the adults and jump out and scare them. Being that the boys were only 6 and 8, the dad did keep his eyes on them pretty much the whole time, and he thought the 5 minutes that they were hiding behind this bush, he did not think that something could go wrong in those 5 minutes. But unfortunately, the dad called the boys back, Douglas appeared, Dennis did not. Now the dad thought he was still playing a joke. They searched for the next hour, the whole area. They started to panic. They called the park rangers, and no sign of him. Over the following days, hundreds of people helped look for the boy. Bloodhounds were brought in, helicopters searched from above, and yet nobody could find anything. There's a lot of speculation as to what happened. Some people say it was a kidnapping. Some people say an animal attack. I just feel like with an animal attack, there would have been some kind of clue, but there's been nothing.
Weird spooky story time, and remember the golden rule: never open your door if no one's there after you hear a knock. So I got a submission from a girl who said she worked at the Sequoia National Park for about 2 years. She said it was 2016, it was getting close to New Year's, and they were getting super busy. So during slow season, they allow the employees to live in the rooms because of all the snow. It makes it easier for them to be able to work consistently. She said the 3 hotels that people were allowed to stay in were the Stewart, the Silliman, and the Sequoia. The Sequoia building was the one that staff was allowed to reside in during the winter slow season. She said she worked with the chef, so it was easier for her to stay in the Sequoia building rather than getting her own cabin. She said in the entire building, it was only 6 people there. She said it was her and her ex, her friend and her girlfriend, one of the managers, and a tech guy. She said that there was one night where she was the only one not working. Her friend, her ex, her friend's girlfriend, the manager was out of town, and so was the tech guy. And she was the only one in the building, so she was just chilling in her room watching TV. She said they were all working the night shift, so she had 8 hours by herself. She was going to work the morning shift. She said because it was so close to New Year's, she knows it was going to be a really busy night, and that nobody was probably going to go to their rooms to chill out. She said as she's chilling and watching TV, she hears a faint on her door. She says she looks out the peep door and there's nothing there, so she's just whatever, I'm probably just hearing things. She goes back to watching TV, and 5 minutes later she hears an actual knock. She She goes to check again, no one at the door. She even opens the door thinking maybe she can't see through the peephole. Never open the door! So she closes the door and she goes to the phone and she phones the front desk and her friend answers. And she goes, hey, is your girlfriend in her room right now? And her friend goes, no, we're all working. She was like, all of you are working right now? And she goes, yeah, only you and one of our other friends are the only ones not working. And this friend doesn't even live in that building. So she's like, is everything okay? And she's like, yeah, I just heard a few knocks at my door. And she's like, when I opened it, no one was there. She was like, my friends worked up there longer than me, and she told me the place was really creepy, but I didn't think anything of it. And her friend was like, well, don't open the door for it. And she's like, well, I already did. And her friend goes, you effed up. She was like, you know what? I've never had anything weird before. Like, you're just tripping. I'll be fine. She just plain didn't believe her. She thought it was all superstitious foo-foo stuff. So her friend's like, you know what? Just be careful and don't open the door again if no one's there. She hangs up the phone, and then 20 minutes later, a loud on the door. She said she decided to listen to her friend and didn't open the door, but she stood at the door and waited for about 2 or 3 minutes silently, and nothing. She said the moment she turned her back to walk away, there was a loud on her door. She said she screamed and she looked through the peephole, and again, no one was there. At this point, she was like, you know what? She grabbed her jacket, whipped open the door, and began to run down the hall. She was in room 336. She said by the time she reached 333, she was getting so freaking dizzy, she could barely walk. She said she started running down the stairs, and she got so dizzy, she actually fell down the stairs. She was like, it was weird because the way I fell, I was able to just get right back up and just kept running down. She was like, I don't even know how I got down that 3 flights of stairs so freaking fast. She got to the front desk where her friend was, and she told her friend what happened, and her friend was like, you messed up because when you opened the door, you invited it in. She said a month later, she moved out of that room. She said after that, she was getting approached by ghosts, not even realizing they were ghosts, asking questions like, where's the lobby room at? Like, guest questions, and then she'd see pictures on the wall of those people who were previous guests from like 40, 50 years ago or something. She said she actually was approached by John Stewart himself, which is what the Stewart building was named after. This was such a good story. I love these creepy, weird stories that like keep you on the edge of your seat. If any of you guys have had weird experiences in the Sequoia National Park or anywhere else, let me know in the comments or send me a message so I can read your story too, because I love this stuff.
If you've been on TikTok for longer than a year, you probably remember when Missing 411, the disappearances in national parks, and all of that were really trending last year on this app. Everyone was talking about it. A lot of people seem to forget why it took off the way it did on this app though, what led to other people telling their stories, and what kept it spreading. The answer involves a person who is no longer with us and who has been forgotten. To back up even farther, this is Ariel, aka the Present Believer. She posted about her experience in a national park early last year where she heard people screaming within the mountains, and it sounded like they were being killed. They were saying things like, we're gonna die, I love you, and please call a ranger. And she reported all of this to the park rangers the next day though. They didn't know what she was talking about and nobody believed her. Ariel's experiences prompted a lot of other people on this app to share their stories, including Mal. Mal discussed her own experiences and her theories about these disappearances, and it really took off and went majorly viral. She had theories and wanted to be heard. And then the video disappeared. Their experiences inspired a lot of articles and even TV shows, including American Horror Story the miniseries. And then April 29th, 2021, something tragic happened. Mallory was driving, and the person in front of her appeared to have brake checked, and she slammed into them. Somebody tried to get Mallory out of her car, but they were having trouble getting the driver's door open. They were finally able to get it open. Mallory was walking around the front of her car with the driver's door open when another car slammed into hers. It caused her car to spin, with the driver's door grabbing Mallory and sending her across at least 2 lanes of traffic. The driver who killed Mallory did not stick around. They took off, and police tried to investigate but ultimately could not find them. Many of Mallory's TikTok videos were deleted, and it's not clear whether she deleted them or if TikTok did, but a lot of what she talked about is now gone. And there has still been no justice on who caused her death, why it was a hit and run. There are a lot of unanswered questions, and a lot of people who believe this goes much deeper than just a simple accident. Mallory and Ariel were talking about things that a lot of other people had experienced as well, and Mal believes that somebody was watching her towards the end of her life. She reported feeling watched, scared, and Ariel posted a video at one point of Mal having a dream that seemed like her spirit guide came to her and told her that she would be okay. It is almost a year since Mel passed away now. The shows that took a lot of the content and quoted her have not mentioned her at all. Neither have the creators who have quoted her on here. Of course, she got some of her theories from Missing 411, but her posting here her own experience and allowing people to do the same was what made this really take off. And now she's gone, and I truly believe that there is more to it.
I saw a ghost in Casa Viejo Meadows in Indio National Forest in California when I was doing my AmeriCorps term in 2016. Do not camp in Louis Stringer Camp or Casa Viejo Meadows. This is my very shortened version of this story. There are a lot of tangents I'm not going to go on or describe, but I'm just going to give you the main scary event when I saw the ghost. We had been in this string of meadows for a while, 10 days on, 4 days off in Tahoe, so 10 days in the backcountry. And we were in this chain of meadows, Casa Vieja Meadows, Horseshoe Meadows, Dutch Meadows, Strawberry Meadows. If you know, you know. Well, at the time, I didn't know. And I didn't know that Forest Service people refused to camp there. So when we got there, usually when you get to a new work site, the Forest Service partner shows the crew leader, where the site is. They stay at night. This crew leader, this guy did not want to stay. This Forest Service partner did not want to stay with our crew. He was like, I'm going to show you guys where it is right now. We had just hiked in. It was 3 p.m. When we got there, I was like, that's so weird that he's willing to leave at dusk just to not camp here. Well, weird things start happening to us at our time there. Nothing too crazy or scary, but just benign things. Really heavy tools around camp being moved. Our brand new water filter breaking, hearing weird metallic banging noises at night that we could not decipher what they were. And mind you, you hear a lot of weird noises at night in the woods, but usually you can decipher what they are. Then the night I saw her, I was walking back to my tent. It was dusk, and my crew leader was walking behind me. We had to step over this humongous log, you had to sit over it to get across. We don't have our handlights on at this point because it's almost light but not quite, almost dark, not quite. Step over the log and I look and I see this form on the ground, and it's looks like a woman with a sheet over her, and all I can see is her profile, a white sheet over her. And I immediately freeze, and I'm like, wait, no, there's gotta be a tree stump, or immediately my mind is trying to rationalize this is not what I'm seeing. And then as he steps over, he's frozen and I'm frozen. This is all happening in a matter of probably seconds. And he turns on his headlamp and we see her. And it is what I thought I was seeing, and the fear that ran down my body. I've never felt anything like that since. I had goosebumps everywhere, including my face. At this point, I'm too scared. I'm turn the headlamp off. I can't look at it anymore. He turns it off, and we're standing there literally in fear, not knowing what to do for God knows how long. It felt like an eternity. It was probably a couple seconds. And then he turns his headlamp back on, and it was gone. And we run back to our pretense and pretended like it never happened. That's not where the story ends. So we go back to society, and when you're in the backcountry, you write down a lot of stuff that you want to look up. You don't have the internet, you'd be surprised how many things you look up a day. And I'm back in town looking up the Native Americans that lived in the area because we had seen some cool petroglyphs there. And somehow I end up stumbling upon this blog and a poster. He says that he's a historian writing a book about the haunted Sierras. And if anybody has experiences in the haunted Sierras or any haunted hikes, tell me why I scroll down. Casa Vieja Meadows, Horseshoe Meadows, Strawberry Meadows are all the places that people, I'm getting goosebumps right now talking about it, all the places that people have also seen this woman, and they've heard metallic banging noises and heard all these weird things and seen these strange things. And Forest Service partners, any Forest Service people, refuse to stay there or camp there. When I'm reading this, it felt like I was seeing her all over again because at that point I had convinced myself it didn't happen. I convinced myself that I was just seeing things. And to be reading that, I will never go back to Casa Vieja Meadows. Do not camp in Lewis Stringer Camp. Don't do it.
I'm so glad that you brought this up. If you haven't heard about Dave Pilatus' Missing 411 series, you need to go check this out. So Dave Pilatus is a former police officer. He's published numerous books outlining the details and similarities between hundreds of missing persons cases across the world. And they are terrifying. Like, genuinely, if there's one thing in this world I'm afraid of, it's the unknown source of these random disappearings that Dave Pilatus talks about. And in the TikTok this comment is referencing, that is actually what got me looking into the Missing 411 and the countless sleepless nights since then. Anyway, so just to paint a little bit of a picture of what terrifies me the most, is that all of these cases of missing people seem to have some of the most inexplicable characteristics. Now, this documentary is available to watch on some streaming services, which will explain in great detail, better than I can sum up, the mystery of what is going on here. Anyway, so essentially most of these mysterious disappearances are occurring in national parks around the world. This is still an ongoing mystery and something that Dave Pilatus has actually dedicated his entire career trying to solve, or to literally just try and make any sense of what is going on for the sake of the victims' families. Now, without going into too much detail of the grim stories, I'm just going to refer to this one here in this article that is eerily similar to the original TikTok of this comment I'm referencing. So it's the story of a boy under the age of 5 that just seemingly vanished while berry picking with his parents. A search was carried out for 2 months trying to find the little boy. After the search dogs lost the scent, which is a similarity in most cases, one that seems to dumbfound the dog trainers even themselves, because it just doesn't really make any sense. Anyway, after 6 months, the family returns to the national park with flowers as a memorial for their lost son. And while they're doing this, their other little boy, also under the age of 5, completely vanishes into thin air. What? These poor people, oh my god. Another search was conducted with around apparently 300 people assigned, but they managed to find the boy and he was completely unharmed after multiple days and nights spent in the national park by himself. Now this is what terrifies me. Not only is the child perfectly clean, there is no dirt on his clothes at all and he does not appear to be traumatized. He was found sitting on a log playing with some twigs by himself. When the rescue officers ask him about where he'd been, he says that he was with the fuzzy man. The officers were like, do you mean like hairy fuzzy? And he just said no, he was a fuzzy man. Damn it, I'm gonna have to make a part 2 for the fuzzy man. It's in the comments, check it out.
I just had the absolute scariest experience that I've ever had on a hike. And when I tell you scary, I mean pure terror. And it's been days since this happened and I cannot shake this feeling. I am at Yosemite. There's me right there. For context, I kind of have a fear of heights, so I get pretty wobbly when there's like a sheer drop or a narrow space. So this was like a 6-mile hike. I was with a friend and there was no one on this trail, not a freaking soul, which was really surprising because it was Labor Day weekend. But I don't know, I guess it just isn't like a well-known hike. I don't have the map for the trail on my phone. My friend had it because she pays for all trails and I don't. We start reaching this absolutely gorgeous view. And so I asked, like, is that the end? Is that the end of the trail? We made it. And she said, yeah, I think that's the end. But we get to this point, like right where I'm standing, and I kind of start getting the heebie-weebies. And I'm like, I think I'm going to stop here. Like, I don't want to go any further. I'm just getting a little spooked. But my friend was like, well, do you mind if I go to the end? I said, go for it, because I thought this was the end right there. So I would just stand there, wait for her to go to the end and come back. But this was literally where we were. So like I start getting a little heebie-weebie. I know it's not narrow, but I just started taking in like how high up we were, you know? I'm standing back here and my friend is all the way at the end. You could see her right there. So I took this picture of her and then I wanted to get another photo. So I turned to the side and I take this photo. And about 2 seconds later, I turn back and this is what I see. She's gone. She's gone. There's no one there. It's just me and this height and the wind, and I have a heavy backpack, and I start panicking. Because here's the thing, that's the end of the trail, right? There's a cliff after that. So I'm thinking, like, there's nowhere she could have gone. There's no, like, do you see that? There was absolutely nowhere that she could have gone that wasn't off the cliff. So I'm looking around everywhere. I'm like, where the fuck did she go? My heart starts racing. And I'm like, okay, I'm entering panic. I'm completely entering panic right now. So I start screaming her name. Where'd you go? Where are you? Come back. Where'd you go? Nothing. All I hear is the wind. I'm like, oh my God. She fell off the fucking cliff. Like, oh my God. So I need to sit down because I like can't breathe at this point. I notice that my limbs start going numb and feel like static, which kind of happens when I have a panic attack. Like I'm yelling into the abyss and I'm like, oh, this is bad. So I have an emergency whistle that's on my backpack. So I start blowing this whistle as loud as I can. And I'm just blowing. And it's just nothing. So I pull out my phone. I'm like, okay, I need to call her. And it says I have service, shockingly. So I go to call her and then immediately the call fails and then it says SOS, no service. I notice my phone's at like 30% and I'm like, oh my God, I don't have the map on my phone. Like I don't have service. I'm by myself. Like, what am I going to do? She's not answering. Like she died. Like she literally died. I'm able to like plug my phone in. I had a portable charger with me. So I plug my phone in and I try to connect to the satellite. So like 10 minutes go by and I'm trying to calm myself down because I'm like, I didn't hear a scream. Would have been weird for her to just like disappear, like fall off the cliff in silence. So I almost throw up. I'm about to cry. I'm thinking of worst case. I'm thinking of the headlines in the news. 20 minutes go by. I'm like, okay, I think at 30 minutes I'm calling 911, like through the satellite. And at around 20 minutes, I see like a head come up and she's back. I've never been so happy to see someone in my entire life, even like Harry Styles. Okay, I can't even tell you. So turns out the trail didn't end at the cliff. It just continued down, but I couldn't see it and I couldn't even move to get up there because I was so freaking scared and my legs were noodles. So when I told her like, yeah, you can go to the end, I thought that was the end, but it wasn't the end. There was more. So she kept going. And then she said that she didn't hear my screams. She didn't hear the whistle. She heard absolutely nothing. And she came back because she thought maybe I would be worried about her, but she thought that I would have called her on the phone to tell her to come back because we both had service. And I'm like, I had service, but it didn't work. Like, then I didn't have service. Anyway, moral of the story, probably like don't separate with people that you're hiking with. It's just not worth it. And also, if you are gonna separate, like have an exact time that they're gonna come back. Can't even tell you the emotions that I felt, the pure terror and fear. And in that moment, I realized like I don't know if I'm a survivor. Like I think I would just curl up and just die right there. So
Spooky Scary Storytime submission was sent in by Alyssa, and she said she wanted to send this story to see if me or any of my audience knew what she and her father witnessed in camping near Capitol Reef National Park in Utah. Alyssa said she and her entire family loves camping, but especially her dad, and they do many camping trips every single year together. Her dad is an experienced outdoorsman, and a couple years ago in early September, they decided they were going to go camp for a couple days in central Utah in this very dense forest area filled with pine trees and quake trees. So when it got dark there, it got dark really fast. She said they were staying for the week, and the first night they're there, they have separate tents, okay? She's in her tent with her dog, and they hear this growling, this barking coming from the forest. She thought that there must be other campers nearby that she didn't see on the hike up. Her dog was whining and whimpering a little bit, but she just tried to comfort him, and they went back to sleep. The next morning, she got up when it was still kind of dark out, so she grabs her flashlight, she goes to take her dog out. And as soon as she unzips the tent, she is hit with the most horrible smell. So she follows her dog out to go to the bathroom, and she comes across this coyote that's been absolutely mutilated. She described this thing as having been put through a wood chipper. That's how bad it was. So she turns around to go back to the tent. She tries to grab her dog, and all of a sudden she feels like she's being watched, and every single hair on her neck stands up. Her dog starts growling and snarling and barking, which is very out of character for him. So she puts her hand on her hunting knife because she's like, there's a mountain lion out here. She's yelling, she's making as much noise as possible so her dad knows where she is. And so hopefully also this thing that she can't see but assumes is out there will back off. She said she started to pray because even though she's never really been one much for religion, she just felt like it would help, and it did. Because as soon as she started praying, she said she felt better and her dog stopped snarling. The feeling of being watched was gone, and they made their way back to the tent. They're camping for a few more days, so it's on day 4. She's pretty much forgotten about this coyote. She figured it was just nature. She doesn't really think anything of that snarling and barking she heard the first night. She's laying in bed in her tent on the 4th night when she hears this loud guttural scream coming from outside in the woods. She said it didn't seem human, it didn't seem animal, so my first thought again was mountain lion. Her dog starts snarling and barking, and she hears this labored, wet breathing coming from outside
inside the tent. She said it sounded like it stopped right in front of the zipper. She said, I didn't know what to do. I couldn't make it to my dad's tent, so I just started praying again, but it didn't seem to help. Her dog was going crazy. She was trying to calm him down, but this thing started circling the tent. She could hear its breath and its dragging of its feet around the tent. Finally, a moment came where it seemed to wander back into the woods, and she just booked it. She ran to her dad's tent, unzipped it, found him in prayer. And she said, this was so unlike him. I've never heard this man talk about God, never heard him utter a prayer out of his mouth. As soon as he knew I was safe in the tent, he grabs his firearm. They look out the tent and they see something tall and hairy and bony and dark, standing on two legs, dragging a full-grown deer into the trees. As soon as it disappeared from their line of vision, they heard another deep guttural scream coming from the woods. She said, we had enough. We packed it up right then and there and we booked it out of there. We have not been back camping there since, but I believe it was a demon. But she said, I'm really just sharing this to see what your followers think, what your audience thinks, because if it wasn't a demon, I don't know what it was. This thing was very clearly on two legs and was not an animal. Oh, I don't know, you guys. These ones just get me.
Someone sent me a DM to tell me about this terrifying creature that they saw in the woods on a camping trip. So creepy TikTok user tales. And if this is nighttime, I would come back and watch this in the morning, because when I first read this story, my son actually walked in my room and I threw a pillow at him because it scared me so much. So it is a little scary. I'm not sure if this person wants to be anonymous. We're just going to call him Amy. If they want to jump in the comments though, that is cool. Amy told me that she went on a camping trip one time with her dad to this place called Fairy Lake, and they were actually going with her dad's friend, but they had gotten there first, so they were there a few days before her dad's friend and her dad's friend's kids. The trip starts off totally normal. They're fishing, they're having a great time. The tide in the lake, I guess, comes up, so they decide that they're going to move their camp up to higher ground. So her dad loads everything up. She gets in the back of the truck. She's riding in the back of the truck up to where they're going to set up their new camp. And she told me that she could feel something watching her. Something just didn't feel right. She just kind of attributed this to being in the middle of the woods, and that just is going to kind of happen. Once they get to where they're going to set the new camp up, her dad gets everything unloaded and starts putting it all together. She's sitting there and she's watching what he's doing, and she says that she hears like rustling, like coming from the woods, like coming from the trees, but it's close and it sounds large. She told me that she looks in the woods and all she can see is like this set of eyes staring back at her. It looks like it is tall, but she can't make out exactly what it is. She just thinks in her mind, must be an animal. We are in the middle of the wilderness camping. She told me she brushes it off and just ignores it. The next day, her dad's friend arrives with their children. That night, Amy is asleep in her tent and she wakes up because she can hear something walking around their campsite, just slow pacing. She said that there was no way that she was going to look outside, so she just sat up and stayed awake until the pacing stopped. The next day, everything is normal, and the rest of the trip actually goes off without a hitch. Nothing creepy happens and nothing freaks her out. The end of the trip comes and they're getting everything packed up. Her dad is loading everything into the car. She decides she's going to go on ahead and just get in the seat and wait for him to be done. So as she's sitting in the car and her dad is off doing something, she's kind of tapping a little bit of a beat to herself. Just kind of what you do when you're trying to pass the time. She told me that as she's sitting there and she's tapping this beat, she hears something on the window tapping along to her beat. She thinks it must be my dad. So she whips around and looks around the vehicle and realizes that there is no one around. As she's trying to figure out where the tapping is coming from, her dad approaches the vehicle and the tapping immediately stops. He gets into the car, he looks at her, kind of is wondering, why are you so pale? What happened? Are you okay? And she's like, I'm fine. I don't know. It was just weird. Something happened, the tapping. And her dad just says, okay, I've got everything loaded. Time for us to head home. I hope you had a great time. She's thinking, yep, awesome. And they start to head out. As they're driving out of this campground, she looks into the woods and she says that she sees what she can best describe as a deer, except it's too big to be a deer and it's kind of standing on its hind legs. Its legs almost look like it's wearing the deer as a suit. She told me that it has antlers and it's kind of, like I said, standing up, and she can see its abdomen, which isn't bright. It's lumpy. It's like it doesn't fit what is inside of this deer. She told me that this thing just stares at her and she is too stunned to speak, and she's looking out the window and making eye contact with this thing, and she said that it felt as if it wanted her to see it. She says something to her dad after they had kind of passed. He looks, he doesn't see a thing. I took her exact description and I plugged it into AI, so I'm gonna insert that now. When you take her description and you plug it into AI, this is what it creates. I wasn't there. I can't say that this is exactly what she saw. This is just what AI creates when told what she saw. From her description, I feel like what she saw was way more terrifying than what we're looking at here, but I don't manipulate it too much. I just plug in the description and AI spits out what it spits out. After she sees this, they go home. She never sees anything like this again. Wondering if anyone has seen anything like this, has experienced anything like this, if anyone has any ideas on what she may have seen in the woods that day and what basically felt like it was stalking her throughout her entire trip. If you have any ideas or if you've seen something like this, drop it in the comment. Like, I kind of know what I think, but I'm just curious to hear what everyone else has to say and what their thoughts are. Thank you so much for listening. If you have a story that you want to send me, there is an email in my bio, or you are welcome to send me a DM. Thank you for dealing with my glasses today. I have this weird eye twitch that I've had ever since I got sober. It comes and goes. This is the only thing that will stop it. These were the cheapest ones that I could get at the optometrist, so here we find ourselves. Also, I sizzled half my hair off on the wood stove and also burned my arm, so things are going really good. Yeah, so that's why we're dealing with this. But it is all good. I am just happy to be here, and I hope that everyone has the best day.
Hey guys, it is time for another spooky story. Today's story is from a follower. She so kindly shared a really creepy encounter that she and her mom recently had while camping in the Appalachians of North Carolina. Aileen and her mother went on an annual family vacation to Lake Santitla, which is a part of the Nantahala National Forest in North Carolina, and of course is in the Appalachians. Now, when they arrive, they decided to stay in two separate cabins. So Aileen has her own cabin. Her mother goes way up the mountain to a different cabin that is close to this hippie hut of sorts. It's like a little community there, and she said her mother wasn't super into that type of a vibe, so she's not happy exactly with where she's at, but regardless, she stays there for 3 days and she has her dog with her. Now, on the third night that her mother is up in this cabin way up in the mountain, she takes her dog out around 10:30 p.m. to go to the bathroom. As she is walking her dog further into this wooded area, she begins to hear whispering coming from the forest. Now, it's important to note that Aileen's mother is out there by herself with her dog. Not long after she hears the whispering coming from the forest line, she hears a growl followed by a cackle or some sort of an evil laugh. Now, this terrifies her so bad that she takes her dog, runs back to her cabin, closes and locks her door. A few minutes later, she hears scratching on the door. She has no Wi-Fi, no cell service. She is in a very remote area up in the mountains, and she was so creeped out by this experience that she did not sleep for the rest of the night. And the second that the sun came up, she left that cabin for the remainder of the trip and goes and spends the rest of the trip in Aileen's cabin down the mountain. Now, of course, the next morning, Aileen's mother shares the experience that she had the night before with Aileen, and as they're discussing it, her mother tries to find a way to rationalize what she experienced, but Aileen just does not believe that, with knowing the history of that place and it having a very well-known history for locals, that anybody would be that far out in the mountains, in the woods with no lights, growling at somebody. Even if it was a person, that's still terrifying. So as their vacation progresses, Aileen goes on to have an experience of her own that she cannot explain. Aileen decides that she is going to take a solo hike up to Yellow Creek Falls. I think that's the name. We'll put reference pictures here. And she said she almost slipped and fell off the falls when she got there. Luckily, she did not, and she is safe. But as she continued throughout the hike, something began happening to her that she just cannot explain. She said that as she was walking, out of her peripheral vision, 3 separate times, she saw what she described as ripples in the forest. Now, when I asked her to clarify or expand on what she meant by that, she said it was like water rippling, but it is in the forest. And she would turn to look at it and it would stop, or nothing would be there. Understandably, this scared her so much that she decided to try to look up some of the haunted lore to see if she could find anybody that had an experience similar to her own, and she found out she is not alone in her experience. Other people have described seeing the same exact thing with like the ripples in the woods. Now, when I heard this, my first thought was that it was some sort of a portal. I don't know. I have no idea what to make of it. That is a wild encounter. As
As far as what her mother experienced, that sounds like mimic type of behavior. We have shared a lot of cryptid stories about the Appalachians on this channel. Some stories are my own, some are from followers, and a lot of the details, I don't think it's coincidence, line up with creepy experiences out in the woods. And I believe that the folklore about, not whistling after dark or not going in the Appalachians after dark, or if you hear somebody call your name, don't answer back, things following you home from the woods and, knocking or scratching at your door. Yeah, that's super creepy. Y'all let me know what you think. If you have a spooky story of your own, paranormal or not, feel free to comment or send me a DM if you'd like to share on the page. Make sure as well to add me on Facebook, same handle, Autumn in Appalachia.
I'm going to be talking about two of the most terrifying and mysterious 411 cases. First case is one of the earliest documented cases in the 411. This is the disappearance of Dennis Martin. It's June 1969. 6-year-old Dennis is camping with his family in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. Sunny and perfect weather. Dennis and a few other kids decide that they're going to play a prank on all of the adults. Like a typical kid, run out of the bushes and yell boo. The other kids run out laughing, but Dennis doesn't. He's gone. Within minutes, his family is out yelling his name and searching for him, and get absolutely no response. Search teams end up arriving fast. Hundreds of volunteers, even the National Guard and Green Berets. They search for days and nothing has came up. Here's where it gets even weirder. About the same time of Dennis's disappearance, another family camping said that they spotted something unusual. They said they heard a loud, awful scream, then saw a figure that was tall, dark, and shaggy moving through the woods, something over its shoulder. No one ever confirmed what they saw, and Dennis's body was never found. And to this day, the official story is quite simple: missing and presumed dead. The Green Berets' involvement, the lack of tracks, and that sighting really wonder if there was something truly out there. 411 cases get even stranger when the person returns, especially under very odd circumstances. Let's talk one of the creepiest cases that includes a person that was end up being found. In 2003, somebody documented a case in Colorado. A hiker, let's call him Mark, was out for a solo day of hiking. Hours later, he does not return. Search parties absolutely scour the trails, but his car is still in the parking lot at the national park. His backpack, however, is gone, and there's no sign of him anywhere. 3 days later, Mark is found by another hiker miles from where he disappeared from. But the most unnerving thing is that he has absolutely no memory of what actually happened to him. He couldn't explain how he got there, where he stayed, how he even was alive. Clothes were slightly tattered, but he had zero injuries. Rangers are baffled. Locals whispered about strange fogs and noises, even shadowy figures in the area. These kinds of cases raise so many questions. People actually lost in the wilderness, or were they taken? Are the moments of missing time natural, supernatural, or a government experiment? I'm probably going to make a whole series out of 411 cases because these tend to be super interesting, and there is a ton out there, with people going missing and never found, people found dead, people returning with absolutely no memory of what happened. Hey everyone, here's 3 unexplained missing person cases that scared me a lot. The first case is Tara Calico. She went missing in September of 1988 in Belen, New Mexico. She just went for a bike ride that she did every day, and she never came back. Now that day that she didn't come back from her bike ride, her mom actually went to look for her and saw pieces of her Walkman along the way. If you don't know, Walkman used to be like CD players, but they held cassette tapes. In 1989, just a year later, this photo was found. It was found in a convenience store parking lot in Florida, and they actually thought this was Tara due to a scar on her leg. The boy was actually thought to be a missing boy named Michael Henley, but was later proved to be untrue because Henley's remains were later found. And they still think that this girl is Tara, but the little boy still is unknown. And this photo really breaks my heart. I don't like it. Tara's still missing to this day. Next case is that of Brandon Lawson. His case really freaks me out. Apparently he ran out of gas in the middle of the night, so he went to a gas station to call his brother for help. After he called his brother, there was a 911 call from him. He was stating that someone had chased him into the woods. Later, his brother and a police officer arrived at the scene, found his truck abandoned, but they didn't find Brandon. His brother did end up getting a call from Brandon, and he stated that he was bleeding and he was about 10 minutes away from his truck. That was the last time that they had heard from Brandon. Now, in February of 2022, they did state that remains were found, and they did find clothing that matched what Brandon Lawson was said to have been wearing that night. I'm not sure if the remains they found were confirmed to be that of Brandon Lawson. If it was, then I'm glad his family could find some closure. And if not, I hope they find him someday. And number 3, Susan Powell. Hers I feel like is so suspicious, but is so right there in your face. So Susan Powell had a husband and 2 sons. It said that they didn't have the best marriage, and there were allegations that he was abusive and controlling. And there's a really weird aspect to this case because apparently his father was in love with her. So they ended up moving because she was extremely uncomfortable, rightfully so. But then one night, they all disappeared. A few days later, the husband came back with the boys. His wife was nowhere to be found. He claimed that he had no idea where she was, and that he went camping with the 2 boys, and everything was extremely suspicious about him. He eventually moved the boys back in with his father that they moved away from, but eventually the 2 kids got taken away because their grandfather, his father that they moved away from, had child things on his computer. And also a ton of weird, creepy pictures of Susan. Unfortunately, during a visit, he locked himself in his house with these 2 boys and ended up blowing up the house with everyone in it. And no one even found out what happened to Susan. I think we all can guess. It really bothers me, especially when children are involved. I just think there was something deeply disturbing wrong with him and his father. But if you've heard of any of these 3 cases or you have any new information, please let me know in the comments.
Today, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite mysteries, the cases of Missing 411. Missing 411 is a book about people going missing in the forest. Now I know, Felix, people always go missing in the forest. What's the big deal? They do not go missing like this. One very strange case is of 6-year-old Dennis Martin. Him and his family go camping and decide to play hide and go seek. His father keeps an eye on him, and the family eventually reveals himself, except for Dennis, who is behind a tree. When the father goes to check on him, Dennis is completely gone. The family and the rangers looked for days. Later on, another family nearby said they heard a scream and that they saw a bear-like wild hairy man dodging trees and had something over its shoulder. Unfortunately, the family never saw Dennis again. If you guys like this, please give it a like.
Bigfoot sightings are not actually Bigfoot. They're feral people, according to one woman named Sandra who emailed me for Spooky Scary Storytime, and she said this is also her theory on why so many people go missing in U.S. national parks, vanishing without a trace. She grew up in Wyoming, and when she was 21, her aunt gets her a job as a bartender at this dive bar in a small town. The place opened in the early 90s, but this is 2001 when Sandra starts working there, and her aunt had started as a bartender and knew all the regulars who would come in. It was the kind of place with an old jukebox, old pool table, but not a lot of action. Mostly the same guys who came in every day and drank the same thing. So she starts working there with her aunt, and she's getting to know all the regulars, and it's about what you'd expect of a dive bar. There's some people that are super obnoxious, some people that want to talk your head off, and other people that are just kind of quiet, come in every day, have the same thing. And one of these guys is really quiet. His name is Hank. You guys know I love that name. If you know, you know. But anyway, she describes Hank as basically like a retired cowboy. He had sun-leathered skin. He wore the same flannel every single day, regardless of the weather, and he didn't say much. He came in, he would drink 1 beer. He would sit there about 2 hours, didn't really talk to anybody, but some of the other guys that drank there knew him. Everybody there called him the tracker behind his back. Sandra's aunt said that he had been coming in since she started working there. Like the day the bar opened, this guy was coming in to have drinks. She said he's nice enough, always tips $2 on his beer. Nobody really knows anything about him, but they called him the tracker because some of the guys knew he used to work for the government, something in wildlife, although they didn't know exactly what. And he's kind of just this quiet background figure at the bar for 2 years until this one night she's closing the bar down and all that's in the bar is her, Hank, and then this other guy who's drunk and talking her head off. And somehow the topic of Bigfoot comes up. She said she doesn't remember exactly how, but this guy's going on and on about how he believes in Bigfoot. And Hank just looks up and he says, Bigfoot's not real, but there's something worse out there. Caught her off guard because he wasn't the type to pipe into other conversations. She had rarely heard him talk. So immediately she looks at him and he's not smiling. He doesn't look like he's kidding. And she's like, what do you mean? She said this is the only story he ever told her in the 7 years she worked there. He said years ago he was tracking a cougar deep in the Medicine Bow National Forest. It was just him, his dog, and his pew-pew. And don't yell at me for using stupid words. You guys know I have to do that. He said around dusk he noticed something was off because the whole forest suddenly went silent. There were no bird or insect sounds, and he thought that there was a predator in his area. He thought he was getting close to the cougar, but then he finds a deer. What he described to her was pretty graphic, so I'm going to glaze over it, but I will say that he said that he determined that it was not destroyed by a cougar, or any other wildlife for that matter. Parts of its hide had been peeled in a very rudimentary way, suggesting that someone had tried to in it but didn't know exactly how. He got a bad feeling. He decided to head back to his truck, but his dog would not budge. His dog was staring off in the woods, and that's when he heard the whispering. He said they were voices, but they didn't sound right. They were almost mocking, and he could only make out one word, which sounded like a very robotic help. He felt very unsettled despite being a man of the wilderness for years and years. He leaves. The next day, he calls one of his old military buddies, and they go back to the same spot where he was tracking the cougar, and they find a bunch of rudimentary lean-tos, large shacks made of branches and trees and trash, ropes hanging from branches of trees, scraps of clothing, and a child's shoe. There was a campfire smoldering outside one of the shacks, suggesting that someone had been there shortly before they arrived, and then they heard the same voice that he had heard the day before, saying, "Help." He said it was in the same tone, that same robotic help, and if he didn't know any better, he would have thought it was being played through a recorder. He said they just got the hell out of there, but what scared him the most wasn't what he saw, it was what he didn't. He said it was the way he felt watched, and he knew that whatever was out there didn't run, it waited. And Sandra's like, well, that's scary, who do you think it was? And he tells her that the government knows that there are groups of feral people living in U.S. National Park, generations of people living off-grid in the deep woods. He said they're feral, violent, and not quite human anymore, and anytime a hiker or camper just vanishes without a trace, the official narrative is that they just got lost. He tells her he knows this because he used to work as a federal contract employee that went in when something strange happened on federal land. Disappearances, disturbances, campsites torn apart with no signs of animals. Sometimes his team would find human footprints alongside claw marks, just stuff that didn't make sense. He said they were trained not to ask questions, just to track, document, and clear the area. He said they were instructed to report the location but never engage, and once they even found a cave system rigged with traps. They found snares made from bones, makeshift torches, and writing on the wall in what looked like gibberish with who knows what. And that cave was less than 2 miles from a missing persons report, which was then closed off to the public. And he says the reason that they won't go public with this information is simple: panic. He said if people knew there were whole communities of feral, violent, and human-adjacent people living in national forests, people who don't follow laws, who don't recognize civilization, who don't even speak the way we do, it would cause chaos. Tourism would tank, hunting and fishing licenses would drop, and national parks would become ghost towns. But he said there's no solution. You can't just round them up, because then you'd have to admit that they exist. You can't go in and force them to move out, because that's a human rights violation. He said, assuming they're still human. So instead, Hank said they just don't talk about it. They write off disappearances as accidents, quietly shut down trails where the sightings are too frequent, keep people away with signs that say damage or trail maintenance. He said the reason that people still see them is because there's too many to hide, but not enough to fight. So they just wait quietly and wait for people to wander off the trail. After he tells her that story, he just sits back and finishes beer. He tips her $2 and leaves. She said he never seemed to care to talk about it more, but she never forgot it either. So what do you think? Crazy guy in a bar, or did he know something that most of us don't? If you have a spooky, scary story time, I would love to read it. I try to upload at least one video a day.